Well, welcome to Unedited. It's good to be here today. My name is Jordan. I'm joined by Charis. And Charis, it's good to have you back this week.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Episode 10. You were here last week.
Yes.
Did you enjoy it?
I did really enjoy it. I was sitting in your seat
You
and
were.
Ethan was here and he made a joke about how I was going to have to replace him next because I replaced you.
Yeah.
So here we are.
It's come to pass. I'm glad to have you here. You look a little different. What changed about you since last week?
I lost 16 inches of hair.
Oh, did you?
Did.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it. Awesome.
It's been about a week and it's super fun, but it's also driving me crazy because
Is
I
it?
can't just throw it up.
Yeah.
I have to do it like every day.
That makes sense.
But
That makes sense. If you would believe it, when I was in high school, I had hair down to about my shoulders.
okay.
And back then, everyone did the part in the middle and like the Nirvana look, essentially.
Yes.
And I went to something like that spiky short on the sides thing.
Okay.
And it was crazy because I
Yeah.
felt the same pain. I was like, the old haircut was way easier. So
Yeah. People are like, oh, it'll be so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it dries faster, but that's the only thing that's easier.
Yeah. Does it feel lighter?
It does feel lighter. It moves
'Kay.
a lot more.
Okay.
So it doesn't get like pinned behind my arm or my back or anything. But
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
It looks good. Good
Thank
for
you.
you. So, well, welcome here. It's been a good couple of weeks. I was on a little bit of vacation myself. So, but back now, and we're going to get into this. Why don't we talk about what's in our feeds?
Sure.
In my feed.
So this is a segment where we discuss something that we found out maybe on the internet or maybe a newspaper. Do you ever read a newspaper, Charis?
Oh, only at the doctor's office.
Is it? Yeah, really? Okay. When I was on vacation, I actually bought the Winnipeg Free Press when I was in Winnipeg.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't usually do it here a whole ton, but mind you, I did have purpose. I was looking for some Folk Fest reviews and like writing and stuff. But newspapers have kind of gone the way, eh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
So,
all online.
yeah.
If I want to know anything, I Google it.
I felt funny actually walking to the till with it. And
Yeah.
even my dad, who was like a lifer, had the Sun delivered our whole lives, has now just gone to his phone. So that's when you know things are changing, right? So why don't you go first? What did you find? What's interesting to you? What popped up?
What I looked for some news in like the Christian circles because I did something funny last week and I didn't really want to do that again.
No, that's all good.
So I found, though, this article about Filipino churches that are developing their own worship music.
Nice.
And so apparently the Philippines are a country known for loving Western praise music, and that comes from the fact that they were colonized by the West, right? And it just became this super popular thing. They're Hillsong's second biggest market.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
isn't that?
Yeah.
And I mean, so much of our worship, so much of our praise music comes from like 5 main sources, right? If you look on CCLI, you'll just see the same names over and over and over
It's
again.
true.
But I thought it was so cool that people in the Philippines are starting to write music in their own language.
Yeah.
Because they can't find translations, like official translations of Western worship songs in Tagalog, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And so what they'll sometimes do is sing a song in both languages, like having the verses in one and the chorus in another, and then the sermon itself is preached in like a combination of English.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I just think it's so beautiful that they are writing their own music for their own people.
I would agree
And
with you.
yeah, one of the other things that it was saying is that these artists like Bethel and Hillsong and the very popular artists, they're of course from America. And so they're writing about issues and things that come from like this very American perspective and have like American theology. And like, not that that's bad, but it's not always something that's going to connect as well to
Yeah.
the Filipino church.
I would agree.
So, yeah, it's
No.
just really cool.
It is cool. I like the idea that they're doing that. I think it's going to bring a whole like a deeper meaning to the experience for the people there. But also, like you said, like it is interesting. Like it's almost like going to a conference sometimes. Like if I go to a conference on church life and how to build the church and how to grow the church, right? And
Yeah.
every speaker is from America, right? Like it's a lot different in Canada. Even though we are a lot like Americans, things are still quite different up
and
here.
we're so influenced by them, but it's still...
Exactly. And so it's refreshing to hear things like, and I always say to myself, I want to hear people from Canada. Like, what is your experience? Like, what has happened? What's going on? Like, how can you help me? How can I help you? Kind of thing. And I think this is exactly what we're seeing happen here. And it's interesting that they were like, you said they were Hillsong's second biggest market?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Yeah. I never would have guessed that probably, but obviously a very musical culture. And I think this is cool. I think that they're definitely going to, it would be neat to, if maybe different parts of the world would maybe embrace singing in their language a little bit sometimes, right?
Well, they were saying that like the exchange of music is still relatively one-sided, of course, right? But I would love it if that shifted. I think that'd be so cool.
100%. Have you ever been in a worship experience where someone's sang different lyrics, like different languages and different songs? Like,
I mean, we do a little bit here sometimes.
Yeah.
Like Camilla will often sing in Spanish, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes Roger has too. And I always think it's so beautiful. But what they have typically done is taken songs that we know in English and like sing them in
just
Spanish.
in their language,
But it's one thing that they said is that it's easier for Filipinos to connect to the theology and the doctrine and understand what's happening, like when it's in their native language, in their mother tongue, right? And I think that that's so true. And so I love it when we have people here at the church singing in their mother tongue, in the language that they first knew, because to worship God in your heart language, right, is so special. And so much more impactful.
And it's got to carry so much meaning for the people, especially of the culture, who would understand it. But also, I think it brings meaning for people who don't understand it. And but you see that this is a different language and a different expression, right? And I think it's meaningful for everyone to encounter this stuff at all times, really. We can use a lot more informing about what's happening around the world and and how people worship different and what's relevant in different contexts. Like, what's a big deal over here in Canada might be pretty secondary somewhere else, right? And vice versa. So no, this is cool. I do like this. I think this is a good thing to see, and interesting that they're heading down this route. And it's interesting that like they were known so much for liking Western music too at the beginning. I didn't expect you to say that. So
no,
I would have thought the second biggest market would have been like Britain or something. Right?
Yeah, well, you'd think so, right? Or like
or Canada even, like for like Australia music, right? So
something in the what is that called? All
what
of the colonized countries.
Yeah. Oh no, I hear what you're saying though. Well, first world?
No.
No? No?
It's gone. It's okay.
If it comes back, you could just interrupt me at some point and bring it up.
I will 100%.
Sound good? You could be like, remember that part we were talking about earlier? We're going to do that. But no, this will bring greater expression. And theology is so important in music. Do you agree?
Of course. Yeah. Oh, and I was having a conversation about this at camp. I was at Camp Kadesh just yesterday, actually. And I was there for a few days, and we were talking about the songs that we sing at camp and how so much of what the kids are going to remember about who God is the songs that they're going to sing, because it's going to get stuck in your head, right? And another article that I was actually looking at was about how lots of elderly people, like their ability to recognize music doesn't like decrease really as they age, right? And there's so many beautiful stories of people with like dementia or Alzheimer's who can't even remember their own family members are able to remember these beautiful hymns from when they were growing up in church, right? And so music is so important. And if we're learning so much from it and so much from what we consume, then we have to make sure that it's solid theology.
Yeah, no, and I agree 100%. And in many ways, like you're saying right now, that's how people are being taught too, right? Whether we like it or not. This is why I find Christmas so refreshing, because we bring out the Christmas carols, and some people don't like them. And I've tried playing them before on the guitar, and they're very hard, actually.
They
are. You got
so
to
many
switch chords every second, right? But the theology in them is fantastic, and it brings out the meaning of the season even more. Like I used to sing a song, for example, like "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," and just kind of went over my head. And then I listened to it one day, and I'm like, "Whoa, like this is like some pretty deep, like foundational stuff of our faith, right?" So no, theology is so important when it comes to music. I always respect it when people place that at high priority. I understand that some songs are meant to bring energy at times and whatnot, but I always want to make sure that the words have a meaning to it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm with you there.
and we're gonna go there. All right, I'm gonna share from my feed, okay? And this is gonna be pretty plain and simple, but I think it's gonna give us something to talk about, okay?
Okay.
Today's headline. This came out yesterday. One final day of extreme heat, says Environment Canada. Have you noticed it's been hot around here lately?
It has been so hot. It was so smoky this past weekend.
Yes.
It was gross.
And these are the avenues I want to go down right now, too, is because it's been hot, definitely, but it's brought a bunch of problems in the area, right? Like, I don't even want, it's absolutely tragic to see what's happening in Jasper today. Have you
Yeah.
heard about that?
Yeah, I heard about it yesterday.
Apparently, the fire's made its way into the city, and it's not good. Even like first responders are having to leave because the air is so bad. So if you don't have the proper ventilation, you can't be out there. And it's tragic to see, but it's been hot and it's been steamy now. When I was on vacation, I was out in Winnipeg, and out there they had their extreme heat while I was there. And then when I returned back here, that's when Saskatoon started their extreme heat. So
Okay.
I've had like 2.5 weeks now of extreme heat, right? And I like to walk, so this has been a little challenging actually. I went for my walk last night at 5:00. Don't do that. I got back at 6 and I was just like drenched. Yeah, it was unbelievable actually. And so don't do that. But this heat is causing all sorts of interesting stuff, because I remember back in May and June, we had not the best weather, I would say.
Yeah, it was rainy.
It was cool, right?
Yeah.
We never had any hot days. And I remember we were always saying, well, it's good for the farmers. It's good for the farmers. And then by like the beginning of July, I was like, that's it. I'm done saying it's good for the farmers,
Yeah.
right? The farmers got the rain, right? But the farmers, ironically, though, needed it to stop actually too.
Yeah.
So it actually worked out for them, the ones I talked to anyways. And then you bring this heat now, and now it's causing smoke and fires and stuff. And one thing I was going to say was I was so excited to wake up on my vacation seeing the forecast coming up. I didn't realize, though, that all 4 or 5 of those days were going to look like cloudy days,
Yeah.
right? Because you couldn't see the sky, you couldn't
It
see
was
the
so-
sun. It was like
Yeah.
everything was just still kind of dreary a bit, even though you had really hot conditions. And but it says one final day of extreme heat, and then we're going to cool down a bit. Are you ready for a cool down?
I honestly am.
Yeah?
I went up to camp and I don't have air conditioning in my car. And so I drove up
'Kay.
Sunday evening.
Okay.
And it was super smoky and it was warm.
Yeah.
So I was sweating for
Yeah.
sure on my way there. And then I got there and I walked into the chapel where the kids are jumping and dancing and the kids
And
are
there's
sweating.
no air
and
conditioning there either,
I-
right?
No, not even a little bit. And so,
So-
I'm like covered in bug bites and I'm sweating
Yeah.
bullets. And I was
Yeah,
like,
you're a
this is
trooper, because like
terrible.
that had to have been quite the day. Did you drink lots of water?
I did drink lots of water.
That's
and,
good.
Yeah. And then it cooled down for a couple of days. And by cooled down, it was 26 instead of 34. But
Oh, okay.
it wasn't too bad up there.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have a vehicle right now that I'm borrowing from someone that doesn't have air conditioning. So I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about now, right? Did you keep the windows down at least? Or
Oh,
anything?
yeah. The windows
Okay.
have to be.
What I do actually is I bring one of those spray bottles of water, and every now and
Oh.
then I'll just flick my glasses off and spray myself down. And at Folk Fest, everyone kept spraying me. This is what I went to when I was on holidays
Yeah.
in Winnipeg. It was like a music festival kind of thing, and people will just spray you. They'll just walk up to you. You need some? Yeah, sure. You know,
Yeah,
just get a
that's
full
so
full spray.
lovely.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Everyone's kind of looking out for each other, and I was that person who, glasses off, walked up to like the drinking water and was like, shh, right? Like,
Yeah.
just spraying myself because it was so hot out. But it's too bad what it's causing all around. We're seeing it happen in Jasper. We're seeing the smoke in the air. I think we could use some rain. We could use a little cool down, and hopefully, things get underway for that. Actually, in fire news, interestingly enough, I'm just going to bring this up randomly. My former school in Thompson burnt down yesterday. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, like literally, yeah, it was crazy actually. So like everyone in my class on like Facebook and Instagram are like messaging each other, and like it honestly got us sharing memories and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
After
Like,
years of not really connecting.
It was called Westwood School. It was in Thompson, Manitoba, and the initial reports was it was an electrical panel, but now they're saying the RCMP are saying they don't know the cause, and the thing is fully engulfed, like it's done.
Okay.
And the weather didn't help either, because Thompson gets long cold winters, but they get short hot summers. So like their summers for the 7 weeks they get are plus 40 every day, right? But then their winters for the 8-9 months they get
or
are
like-
minus 40 every day,
exactly.
right? So, and I'm not joking when I say that. Like, it's constant deep freeze up there. But yeah, so that's terrible to hear, and I don't know. That's gonna give them a hard time for the start of school. It got me thinking as a student again. Like, as a kid, I was sort of a rebellious kid, so probably for a millisecond I'd have been like, "Oh, right on, no school this year,"
Yeah.
and then reality would have hit me later on that day that, "Oh my goodness, this is terrible, right? Nothing's gonna be the same." And so yeah, heat is good, but heat also brings with it, I think, some other things that we have to take into consideration as well.
Yeah.
So could you live in an environment where it's this hot every day?
I honestly don't know that I could.
No?
I do not like sweating.
Okay.
It's so awful.
Yeah.
And also I find like anytime that I visited anywhere that's more humid than here, my hair freaks out.
Okay.
Because it changes. And I mean,
Yeah.
you'd adjust and you'd learn and I'm sure that I could live anywhere.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be my first choice.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I actually love it when it comes, but I appreciate when it's gone too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we get so much winter that it is nice to have a warm up, but hopefully things get under control. I'm going to segue into something completely random here because the heat could affect that too. Can you imagine if it was this hot in Paris right now? And you were going to start running tomorrow, or the Olympics are getting underway kind of thing?
Yeah, and Paris, apparently when it's really warm, also stinks, super
Does
bad.
it?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, when I went to Paris in October, and I was only there for a few days.
Yeah.
But people were like, "Oh, it's going to smell so terrible. Like, how does it smell?"
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
This
I
is
was
new
there
info
in
here.
like October, and it was like 14 degrees out. So it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Because it's just not hot enough for the stench to really bother you.
Yeah. Well, and I assume they get hot season right now.
Probably.
They're kind of a bit like, upper, we're kind of where we are in a way, like just around the world, of course, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see how that affects things out there. Are you a big Olympic watcher? Are you looking forward to it?
I'm looking forward to it. I wouldn't say that I'm a big Olympic watcher.
Okay. Yeah, you're into it. Producer Ashley's into it for sure. I almost used in my feed the story of the Canadian women's soccer team, but I thought, we'll leave that one alone today. We won't get into that whole drone thing. You know what they say, right? If you're not cheating, you're not trying, I guess, right? So
I don't think that's scriptural.
Joking. Yeah, I know. I'm kidding. But I heard so many people comment that yesterday for fun because, like, what do you say, right? It's a terrible story, and it's too bad that it even had to happen. So, but look at that. They did just win their first game 2-1. That's exciting. That's good to hear. So hopefully things get sorted out, and hopefully, hopefully we can get past that as far as the team, because I don't want that to overshadow what the ladies are going to do on the field kind of thing, right? So I don't want that to become the big thing that Canada is known for this Olympics. So
no, hopefully not.
Anyways, I had to segue into the Olympics because I had to talk about sports every single time I'm on here. And thank you for being a trooper, because Ethan typically doesn't like it. So he typically just entertains me. And
no, I don't mind. I wouldn't say that I can like contribute very much.
Yeah, we'll do a winner. It's in progress, the game. Okay, so I'm hoping we're gonna win. So that's the fingers crossed here. We got good vibes on that. But maybe we'll do a winter episode, me and you, because we both like the Winnipeg Jets, right?
We do.
So we could really go on about that for a long episode one day, okay?
Okay. I don't know again how much I can contribute, but I do watch the Jets and do cheer for them.
I will bring you back for that.
I'll bring my jersey and we can wear jerseys.
Sounds good.
Together.
Yeah, we'll do it. Absolutely. I look forward to it. Well, that's cool. There's some interesting things happening around the world. Why don't you just let us know out there if you have any thoughts on any of that, the worship music, creating music in your own language. Maybe you're a songwriter, and maybe that's something that is important to you. Why don't you throw a line at us and let us know what you think of that? Why don't you let us know what you think of the heat and what it's causing? Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? Like some people, this is terrible for. On my walk this morning, I saw about 8 different roofs being changed. And I just thought, those poor guys, like, you know what I mean? I hope they get a good wage, because they are earning their coin being up there changing shingles in this weather, right?
Well, anybody who does outdoor construction work.
Oh, for sure.
In any of the weather.
It's intense.
It's so bad.
So,
yeah. And the smoke, too, is so terrible for people with, like, allergies and any kind of lung issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, they did just win their first game. 2-1. No, we're still going. Okay. Sorry, I'm not trying to lead us astray here. Why don't we segue here? Why don't we move to something different in the neighborhood?
In the neighborhood.
This past week, we had a guest speaker at the Neighbourhood Church, Rod Corcoran.
Yes.
He's from Estonia. He does work out there. I believe, if I'm not mistaken here, you can correct me, but I believe he's the president of a Bible college out there.
I know he's involved in the Bible college.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's the president.
Yeah. Okay. I think he's in charge. I think he kind of gives
seems like a man in
leadership
charge. Yeah.
to some extent. But he talked to us this past week, and anything that stood out to you from his talk?
One of the things that he said at the end, which just really encapsulated a lot of what he was saying, like he gave us some challenges, and his one challenge was on identity.
Okay.
And it was to know who you are.
Yeah.
And I'm in my early 20s, and I feel like I'm always figuring out new parts of who I am. And after high school, you go through so much shift in your identity, right? And you really step into what it means to be an adult. But he was talking about how you can't live differently if you don't know who you are, and you don't know that you carry the badge of being a son or a daughter, that you're a member of the royal priesthood, right? That you are called by God. And so I've been thinking a lot about calling over the last few years as I've been deciding what I'm going to do with my life.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was probably the biggest thing that stood out for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I actually love that. I think that's something I wrestled with too. Probably in my college years. So probably between that'd have been 2002 to 2006 now. But
That's so crazy.
But I know it's a long time ago. But I definitely struggle with that. One of my big things with living my Christian life was that I always thought that God was upset with me. I don't know if I got that growing up. I think it might have been something I learned maybe in my Catholic background. And I just want to say the Catholic Church did a lot of good for me. I want to say that. I don't want to completely disparage it, but I got this idea somewhere in life that God was just not happy with me. And so like if I do enough good things and maybe I could please him, maybe he could like me a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But knowing your identity, knowing that you are a son or daughter of the King, like that's life-changing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it changes how you can live. It changes how you interact with God. It changes how you see God. It changes not only how you see yourself, but how you see people.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And when I learned about grace, it was such a game changer for me because I was the kind of person who couldn't accept grace. And half of my class, and I should stop and say that I didn't grow up in the church, really. I more or less came to faith when I was 18. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to Bible college 2 years later, most people there had the opposite problem. They would say to me that they probably cheapen grace or abuse grace a little bit or make grace cheap, sort of, right? And I was the guy who couldn't accept grace and didn't know it. And but once I read a book by a gentleman named Philip Yancey. Have you heard of him before?
I don't think I have, but I'm honestly terrible with names.
Okay.
So.
He's a good read. He wrote a book called What's So Amazing About Grace, and it transformed the way I looked at myself and the way I saw others. And not that I don't ever still struggle with this, because I think we all do. I think it's in those moments when we have to go back and remind ourselves of who we are, right? Mm-hmm. But when I learned about grace, when I learned that I was a son of the King, it changed the way I went about living my life. It allowed me to live different.
Yeah, and it calls you to a higher standard too, right?
Absolutely.
And so on the other side, on the side of somebody who maybe abused grace or took it for granted, right? Just understanding what it actually means to be called and to be called to be part of this royal priesthood. And there's just a higher standard that we are called to live in and live as, right? And so
I think Rod used the term live differently or something like that, right?
He titled his sermon "Living Differently."
Oh, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
gee,
pretty
where
sure.
am I here? No, I remember him saying that the phrase he was using when he was in college teaching students was the idea of live different. And living different's not always easy, right? It can feel a little bit strange. Like I bet you have stories where, and even in high school or any time that like you wanted to live different than the way culture was going, and it can feel a little alone in that moment, right?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
You can kind of feel like you're just by yourself, and to me, living differently starts with what you're talking about. It's about knowing your identity and knowing who you are in Christ. And once you got that, it's not that you have everything figured out, but it's that you know where your source is, right? Mm-hmm. You know where to come back to, where to head forward to.
And one of the things he said with that, right, is like when you know your identity, like we know freedom in Christ. One of his points was to live free with respect for others, right? And so when we know who we are and we know that we've been bought with a price, right, by Christ and by his sacrifice for us, we are free. And with that freedom means that we are free to become a slave to Christ, right? And so, and that paradoxical language, right? And it allows us to serve people and serve in ways that we otherwise wouldn't have the capacity for. And we realize that nothing is beneath us. Nothing is too low of a job. Yeah. And it's just, that was really great.
And that, I love that. I think that's such a freeing concept, and yet such a, like you said, it's a paradox, and it seems almost backwards if you look at it towards like maybe the way society would view it.
100%.
But like biblically, like your freedom doesn't just allow you to live how you want, but it also allows you to serve others. It allows you to recognize, like you said there, that nothing's beneath you, that if we have to stack chairs, we do it freely. We don't do it because we're forced to. We do it because we're free in Christ, right? And we move on, and we do these things. No, that's good. He also talked about submit to authority for the Lord's sake, and that we should be doing everything for the Lord's sake. And he talked about a student who had to submit to authority, and I found this story fascinating when he brought this up. It was a student who had come to the Bible college that he's running, and he had permission to share this story, so we're just going to talk about it, obviously not use names or anything, right? Yeah. But the student was with him. They'd left the country for a little bit, and while they were on a trip, it was actually crossing the border that something flagged in this student's background, right? Yeah. And he'd owed a debt to society. He'd committed an offense, and I guess Interpol got a hold of it, and literally in the middle of class one day came in and apprehended the student. Yeah. And the student ended up spending, I think it was 2 years in jail.
I think so. Yeah, he just got out this last May, I believe.
Yeah. And Rod talked to the students, like, throughout the process on the phone and, visiting and whatnot. And one of the questions he asked them was, are you upset with me that I took you on this trip, and that, I opened the door for you to get in trouble, essentially, right? Or to get caught, really. And the student said something to the extent back to him that, you know what, I had a debt to pay to society, right? And I need to submit to authority in this area in my life right now. Yeah. And actually wholeheartedly just embrace the moment that this was a consequence he had to pay, had to deal with. And in that, he was still free, and he was more free in the sense that he just recognized that this is something that he had to do for God's sake and not just for his own sake. Yeah. And I found that fascinating, because I think I'd have some bitter feelings. I think I you know what I mean? I'm sure he had some. I think I'd have some, like, whoa, like, wait a minute here, like, my life's changed and now I got this hiccup. But who knows what the experience was there? Maybe he was able to minister well in that situation, right?
And it's a testimony too, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a testimony of forgiveness, and of course the grace of God is amazing, and it covers so much, right? But also there are consequences for our choices, right? And so I think it's such a lesson for people. Yeah. In all of that.
Do you think we live in a culture where we like to submit to authority?
I do not think that we do. No, I think that and so much of it's sometimes hard to separate what is Canadian culture and what is American culture, right? But we live in free countries, and we're so grateful for that. And we talk a lot about our rights. Yeah. And our right to do basically whatever we want. And we have this attitude of, I don't have to listen to you because I can do anything, right? And people even bring that attitude into religion, right? Into Christianity, right? Yeah. And they don't think that they need to follow what Scripture says, because we are free in Christ, and we are free in Christ to follow what he tells us to do, right? Exactly. And so it's again the paradox, and again submitting to what is right, and doing that not for the sake of the government or for the sake of your reputation, but doing it for the sake of God's reputation, right? Because we are representatives of Christ, and we are representatives in our culture in the way that we interact with one another. And so if we're going to be unwilling to submit and full of pride and arrogance in that way, then we have poor representation
Yeah.
of Christ.
No, that's well said. That's well said. And if Christianity teaches us a better way, and I believe it is, then we're free to live in that better way, right? The freedom that we get allows us to submit to things and to represent well and to go into the world. You know, it's interesting because submitting doesn't always mean agreeing per se. Like we can disagree with maybe someone in authority has to say, right? But it's our disposition towards them that we recognize they're in that position of honor, so we submit, right? And it's a way of showing respect. It's a way of loving the other person, I think, too. And in the same time, most times it doesn't prevent us from going out into the world and loving people and loving God and loving one another, right?
And Rod said something at the end of his message, right, when he was talking about context, and he was talking about how Peter is talking to this group of people, but Peter, in another story in Acts, didn't listen to the authorities, right? And Peter was told, like, hey, you got to stop talking about Jesus. And he was like, I can't do that, right? And so Rod did mention that it takes wisdom, right? And all of these things we hold, and we surrender and submit first and foremost to the authority of God. Definitely.
Yeah. He talked about injustice a little bit and talked about, trying to do good in the face of injustice is a challenge. And I think I've experienced that. And I'm sure you have in your life as well, right?
I mean, I'm sure those people have had it way worse, but there are the little things that we would consider.
Oh, for sure. Our what we call them, the first world problems probably aren't exactly what they're facing in this society. But even just when someone does something that you don't like or that you don't agree with, and we're even talking Christian leaders here, right? I think we have a responsibility to still love each other and to still support each other, still submit to that, right? One of the bosses I once worked with always said that we could disagree with this behind the scenes, but in public we support each other, we love each other, we push it forward, kind of thing, right? Yeah. And we could have our debates on our own time. And I just think there's something important about that, is just making sure that we live respectfully towards one another, and especially towards those in authority, because being in authority is not always a fun thing either. I don't know. I'm not one of these people who's always wanting to jump up and grab authority. Do you know what I mean? Because authority has responsibility, and it carries with it a lot of weight and a lot of pressure and a lot of stress and a lot of things like that.
And somebody's going to be mad, no matter what decision that you make, right?
Yeah. You're always going to, when you're in authority, you got to recognize that you're always going to tick someone off, right? I guess it's just learning to walk with wisdom, as Rod talked about, and as Peter talks about in this letter, and just recognizing that at the end we come back to loving God and loving people. We'll probably find ourselves on a better track than our rights and what we want, right? I heard a pastor once say, you always talk about your rights, but your rights were nailed to the cross when Jesus died, right? And when he said that, I was like, wow. that kind of bit me, right? Because it hit me hard, because the call to follow Christ is a call to take up that cross, right?
Yeah.
And that's very foreign in our culture. But when he said that, I'm like, yikes, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do like to get on the whole my rights kind of moment, and that's just it brings us some sobering perspective, I think.
For sure, and it's an understanding of it's how we understand God too. I was reading a book. It's called Preaching, Communicating Faith in an Age of Skepticism, I think. It's by Timothy Keller.
Yeah.
And so it was for one of my classes.
Great book, yeah.
Great book. And so I was reading it, and he was talking about legalism and antinomianism, right? So legalism is like very black and white. You're restricted, right? And antinomianism is kind of this belief that you can live however you want.
Yeah.
And how both of those two things, as much as they seem like opposites, they're rooted in the same lie. And that lie is that our God is not a good God, right? And so legalism believes that you have to like rip salvation out of God's unwilling hands, and antinomianism says that, well, God wouldn't actually want me to follow all of these laws and all of these things that he's said, because that's not good, or those things that he's asked of us aren't good, right? But they are good. And so that actually blew my mind.
Oh, that's really good. I like that. It's Timothy Keller was a gem. And check out his writings if you haven't. His stuff is worth checking out, but that's a great point. And that both have the same root, regardless of how they're lived out in opposite sides. They both come from that same place of a misbelief in who God is, right? Mm-hmm. So anything else stick out to you that you want to touch on, or you feeling okay?
I'm feeling good. He talked about facing injustice with courage and dignity and restraint, right? And all of that comes down to forgiveness, right? And grace and showing that to one another as we've received it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this all comes down to, I've used this phrase before. I've heard many use this phrase before, so I've stolen it from someone, but just this upside down kingdom living, right? Like, you know, the ways of maybe the way the world would say, like, you know, be here and rule over everyone, right? And Jesus would say, actually be at the bottom and start serving everyone and look out for everyone. And so to live out these principles that Peter talks about here in Scripture, you need to have that mentality. You need to embrace that style of living, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for you to do this. It's going to be very hard for you to submit. It's going to be very hard for you to live free. And even if living free means serving others and doing things for other people. And that's a countercultural. That is living different, as Rod said at the beginning of his talk. And, you know, we can't do it without God's help and without knowing who we are in him. So do you want a last word on it, or are we good?
The only thing I have to say is Christ is our example.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Right.
We're going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. So we talked about a few things today in this episode, and we want to just look out and say, how about you?
How about you?
Oh, we got an update here. Can I read this verbatim? Producer Ashley kept messing us up. Don't worry, Ashley. You do so much for us that it's all good. But it's official. Canada won 2-1 versus New Zealand. So we celebrate and we clap for Canada. And that's amazing. That's great. I forgot that the games were underway, but I guess it's already tomorrow sort of over there. Anyways, the time zones are different.
We're getting stuff ahead or
quite different. Like yeah. So that's awesome. So are you an Olympic fan? Anything you're looking forward to in the Olympics? Feel free to elaborate on that. Music in your own language, the importance of that. You could chat us up on that. Do you like the heat? How is this affecting your summer? Has it been a good thing, a negative thing? I will say allergies are off the charts this year. Do you have allergies?
I don't have allergies.
Oh, you're so lucky.
I am very lucky. Although,
like mine have just been like I don't even know where this is coming from this year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, I react really strongly to mosquito bites.
Okay.
Which is like almost an allergy.
Okay.
But like, that's
Do you get the big welts?
Oh, huge.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge. Like yeah. My dog.
I have one on my thigh right now. That's like the size of a toonie at least.
Interesting. Do you use Afterbite?
Afterbite or Benadryl.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Sometimes if it's bad enough. When I was at camp, I took Benadryl because I got like 10. And
Interesting.
I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah. I got to watch with my oldest daughter now too, because I think she's kind of inherited that too.
Yeah.
So she's always like, she's always carrying the Afterbite with her, and she put it on me the other day because I came in from a walk and had a couple welts on my arm, right? So yeah, it's an interesting time out there. But also about the sermon and the thoughts from 1 Peter chapter 2. You know, what does it look like for you to live free? Is it easy for you to lay your rights down for the sake of other people and for the cause of Christ? How has Christ been your example in your life? And if that's the case, how does that influence how you live? Those are all good questions, I think, to ask yourself, right? And to stand back and to take a look at. So we're going to sign off here in just a minute. Anything random you want to say before we go?
Oh, putting me on the spot now.
Yeah, I like to do that. So
we hope to see you at church.
There you go.
That's what I got for you.
Awesome. Yeah, check out the Neighbourhood Church. We got services Saturday at 6, Sunday at 11, and Sunday at 5 in Warman.
Yes.
I always want to say 5:15, even though I know it's 5.
No, if you show up at 5:15,
you're going to be late.
You will be very late.
You're going to come in the middle of things. Yeah. So check us out this weekend. We hope that you have yourself a great week, and we will catch you next time on Unedited.
Unedited is a ministry expression of the Neighbourhood Church. Hosted by Ethan Andrews and Jordan McClellan. Produced by Ashley Drayton. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.